All right, folks, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the build series here of this deck. This is part 2, might be 3 parts to this thing, maybe 4 parts to it, I'm not entirely sure, but here's part 2, so let's enjoy the ride while we're on it. So we're gonna zoom this camera out here, we're gonna pan it a little bit so that you can see all of the guardrail posts that were put into place while I did the framing of this thing here. So right here, this is gonna be a 4-foot inward swing gate. That's why this side of the deck looks a little bit odd, but that's where the stairs are eventually going to go at some point. So let's pan it back over to the corner post. You always want to start your deck railing from a corner post. You determine the height you want to use and you carry it from section to section to section. So that's why, again, it's very important to determine that height referencing off of a corner post. Also take into consideration that when you build a deck, you usually incorporate some kind of slope on it, nothing too dramatic, maybe 1/8 of an inch over the span of 12 feet, just so that water can find the lowest point and run off. So in this frame here, you'll see that I took the first cut to 41 inches, got that right there on the money. I thought this would be a good height given the fact that the railing system I'm going to use will take me up to 36 inches. This will leave a little bit of a gap from the top of the rail to the bottom of the light fixtures that I'm going to put on these posts here. So again, take it to 41 inches and use that as a reference point across all of your posts. Now, there are multiple ways that you could do this next part here. You can snap a chalk line, you can bring out a laser level here, but I just used what I had on hand at the moment. So I took that cut to 41 inches there. I want to make sure that I transfer that same measurement across every single post here. So just clamp the 2x4 in place through a level on top of that thing. So now the bottom of this 2x4 becomes the top of the next cut. Again, you just do that from section to section to section, and that's going to make sure that all of your posts are nice and flush with the previous posts, and nice and level. So if you were to mimic the slope that you have on the actual deck itself, when you cut all of the posts, you're going to have this aesthetic of the deck itself, like kind of just falling. It sounds weird, but even though it's a gradual decline, if you have that decline, it's just going to look weird when you're looking at it from afar. So keep the posts all the same height, keep them level, even though the deck has a slope to it. All right, as you get a good view here of all the posts being cut to that same 41 inches carried from start to finish here. Another call out, remember we're using pressure treated lumber here, so all of this stuff is susceptible to warping, twisting, bending, but work in a timely manner and you can kind of manage it, put it back into place as you need as you go. Remember in the first video, I let you guys know to butt these things up close. As it dries and shrinks, it will create that natural gap, and you can see that all of these have done that, but it's nice and consistent. All right, so here's where the fun begins, the actual designing of this thing here. So as you can see, we decided to go with the vinyl sleeves, the vinyl post bases. Actually, I gave my wife a few options, and of course she picked the most expensive one, but that's beside the point. So we went with the white sleeves, the white post bases that I actually spray painted with some white primer and then put the black matte finish on top of them. So that's the color scheme that we're going to go with here. Ultimately, black and white contrast very, very, very well together, and they complement the wood deck itself. So nice choice. I'm excited to see how this thing is going to turn out. I think you guys will like it as well. All right, so let me tell you guys, I've done a lot of projects in the past. I've done a lot of railing, but this by far was the most intimidating, not based on complexity, but just based on the fact that this stuff is all custom order. You can't buy this in the store. It takes a week to get to you, and each panel is expensive as crap. So you literally have no margin for error. If you mess up, you're wasting time and you're wasting a shit ton of money. So do not mess up. Yeah, that's the approach that I had to take with every single panel here. But as you can see, this stuff is super sleek. It's built just perfectly. The build quality is great on it. Powder black finish. Love how it looks. It's going to be very, very nice when we get this thing going. So here's the first section. It's in place. You can see that. Got it nice and level here. Just following the same measurements all the way across. Of course, these are going to be plumb if you make the right cuts here, but it's level, it's plumb from section to section. So let's get this one going to the next one. All right, now, as I mentioned, each of these sections you have to really hone in on what you're doing here and pay attention. It's very important because you have to cut each of these to size so you cannot mess up. As you can see, the first two sections here are in place. They are nice and level. Panel 2 lines up with panel 1. So that's just a very important detail to make sure that you follow through and keep all of your measurements consistent. Keep everything nice, level, and plumb as you go. So we're going to step back here and look at section 3 that I'm going to get ready to cut here. So this one is almost a full panel. Should be a little bit easier, but again, just have to make sure that you pay attention to the details as you go, so that you keep the stuff nice and level. So now panel 3 is in place, and I am going to show you guys me actually installing one of these things because it's, again, since I did not plan for this railing, I had to custom do all of this stuff. I had to kind of go rogue from the instruction that came with it, and had to install it my own way. So as you can see there, panel 2 and 3 line up nicely. We're going to throw a level on this thing just to make sure that it's all nice and level from one panel to the next. So measure it on the diagonal, get your level in place there, and you can see that this thing is dead on the money. So we're moving along pretty well, and we're in pretty good shape at this point. All right, so pretty much the same process, just repeating it going down the line here. Here's the 4th panel. Nothing new in this frame here, but it's just a beautiful, beautiful product, and I want to keep you guys engaged as we go throughout the build here. So panel 4 is in place here. So next we're going to tackle the last side here. Remember, this part here is going to have that open end swing of a gate. So I'm calling that out because it's very important that the gate itself comes in a 48-inch opening. So I have no room for error again on this one. So when I'm installing these last 2 panels here, you want to make sure that the post that the gate will actually latch and hinge to do not bend toward the house in this case. And on that post there on the right here, you want to make sure that it is not pulled back out to the yard. You want to have those actually come into each other a little bit so that the gate itself will fit nice and snug. All right, so as promised, I was going to show you guys the actual installation of one of these rails. Now, keep in mind, I mentioned it again, this was not planned from the beginning, so I have to kind of custom fit every single panel, and I have to go rogue with how these things say to install them. I have to do it my own way here. So as you can see, this first measurement's 34 3/8. Very important that you get your measurements on the money. Again, these things are expensive, and you cannot afford to mess up here. No pressure, right? So mark your cuts, make your cuts, make sure you use the right kind of blade here. I'm using a Steel Demon, cuts through these things like butter. So get your cut nice and accurate. Then what I did was I used the toe kick, the spacer that came with these rails, make the cut of the bottom cap, put it in place, and get that thing nice and level. Once it's nice and level, you can then reach for your clips that actually hold the rail itself in place. So I got that thing nice and level there, reach for one of the clips, and I'm gonna work side to side here. So I'll move it to, in this case, from my perspective, that's on the left there. Put that little bracket in place where I know it will ultimately end up, and mark the location of one of the 2 screws that go into each bracket. So right there, I marked 1 screw hole. I'm just making it a little bit darker so I can see. Go to the other side, repeat the process. Again, this is very tricky because it's not meant for these kind of posts. It's not meant for 4x4s, it's meant for 3x3s, and it's meant to use their system with their rails, their posts, everything from start to finish. So it's a little bit tricky, but where there's a will, there's a way. Cheesy, but in this case, it's actually very true. So here you can see that where I marked that first pencil mark for where the first screw is going to go, just get 1 screw in place. Then once that's in place, back it out, get the actual bracket itself into place, and then you can get that second screw thrown in there. All right, right, so you can see that the bracket is now held in place with one screw. Throw a little bullet level on this thing here, and you can use that one screw that's in place. And again, these are just little tech screws, also known as self taps, but throw that one screw in there and you can kind of use that as a pivot point to get it nice and level so that you can then throw in your second screw. This is very important because this is how everything is based off this bottom rail here. If this isn't level, the top's not going to be level. These are prefabbed panels that you're using here, so you really don't have much wiggle room. It's all going to be based off of the bottom section and its install. So get that thing nice and level. And then again, what you do to one side, just flip over and do to the other side. So got those two screws in place, so a level on them just to confirm that it's nice and level. And as you can see right there, it's right there in the money. So now, when you're cutting the panels themselves, it's very important to know that you cannot measure from the outside. You can't use your measurement from the outside and then just cut whatever the measurement ends up to be on the other side, because there will not be an even gap. So just use your imagination here before you make the cut and figure out that on the end of your cut where the post is going to go, it has to be the same space on the other side where the other post is going to go. So you want to have the same gap around each of the 4 cuts that you have to make here. So that space needs to be even there, it needs to be even there, it needs to be even there, and ultimately it needs to be even there. All right, so once you got all your cut lines in place, make sure that you're actually gonna cut on the correct side of the line. Use the right equipment, use the right blades, and you shouldn't have an issue here. Once you get that first cut, flip this panel over so that the orientation of the next cut is easiest for you to get the actual cut that you need done. So in this case, I just flipped it over and I had to cut on the opposite side of my cut line, but as long as you make your cuts on the correct side of your cut line, you'll be good to go here. All right, so I got all 4 cuts made to this, and let's get this thing in place here. So it just literally snaps right on top of the brackets that you put in place here. You get one side done, work the other side. Once it's in place here, again, it's very important that you get that nice and level because everything references off of how level this thing is. So once it's in place, you can then put your cap back onto the bottom of it in this particular instance. So you can see that I'm kind of finagling it. I got this a nice and snug fit. I try to get these all as tight as possible. Get that thing, slide it right into place, and it should snap here in 3, 2, 1, maybe not yet, but it's coming. So just snap it on one side, then work your way down to the next, and it's gonna fall right into place. And look how seamless that thing looks from here. All right, get your spacer back in place and then head on to the top portion. Now for here, you're gonna get a lot of scuff marks as you can see there, but you know, these things buff out pretty well. The top is pretty easy, just center it or put it in place however you want. Get the brackets in place there, tack them in place like I did that first screw, get the next 3 in place, and then all will be nice and snug. Once that is nice and snug in place, this thing isn't going to go anywhere. So now we're going to put the final touch on it, and that's the actual top rail cap itself. And again, it's going to be a nice snap-on fit. But what I want to call out here is where you want to make these things as tight as possible. So the instructions say, make your measurement, back it off a 1/16 just to give yourself as wiggle room. I say, forget that. This is aluminum. It's not going to worry about, expanding, contracting here. So this thing technically should be 33 and 15/16, but I'm taking it to 34. So that it's a nice snug fit. May have a little bit of a gap ultimately, but who cares? So again, mark your cut, make your cut, make sure it's nice and accurate. If you have to cut it a little bit long, remember you can always take some off. You can't add back to it. So very important to give yourself a little bit of grace here. But again, the ultimate goal here is to make these as snug as possible. All right, so once you get that last cut, it is time to take your work piece over to your actual panel, and we can see how these things go in place here. So it's a pretty simple process. Once you get your measurement, just take it over to the top of the rail and snap it in place here. So the measurements call, and the instructions call for you taking a 15/16 off of your final measurement. So this actually should have been 33 and 15/16, but I took it to 34 just because I like to have that tight fit from post to post. So get it in place, snap it in place, and let me tell you, at this point, it was hot, the sweat was sweating, and those titties were tittying. It was time to wrap this project up here. So again, snap it in place, make sure it's nice and firm. It's not gonna move on you. One post is good, make sure the next post is good. This one has a little bit of wiggle until I snapped it in place there, but we're all good. It's time to move on to the last one. Drop the mic on them. All right, so 5 out of 6 panels are in place here. We're just gonna do the corner to corner test just to make sure everything is level, of which it is. So I'm feeling really good with how this thing is turning out at the moment. So we're gonna just get a step back, last glimpse of progression from start to this point here. Again, 5 out of 6 panels are in place, so let's get ready for the last one. All right, so we are all wrapped up here with the second part of this deck rebuild series here. The deck railing itself is done. Just have to throw on the gate. That's going to lead down to some stairs here. Again, we'll do that in the next video. We may be able to wrap this thing up in 3 parts, which is the intended goal. It may go to a 4th video. I'm not entirely sure yet. But as for now, everything is done up to this point. So again, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful finish on these rails. I definitely recommend Aria and their line of products. So if you're ever in the market for deck railing, give them a go. You will not be disappointed. Very sturdy materials, very well put together product, just no complaints at all. A little intimidating based on the price point, but it is well worth it. And these things are built to last, I'm sure. So the gate's gonna go there. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll stop talking so you guys can get the full enjoyment out of this build to this point. So thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next video.